Hello everyone, and welcome to 6-Path Weeb. I'm thrilled to have you here on my channel, where we dive deep into the world of anime with unique twists, creative theories, and fan-made stories that explore the paths less taken. Today's fanfic topic is, what if Naruko fell in love with Gaara? Get ready for an emotional, action-packed reimagining of the Naruto universe with a fresh perspective on two complex characters. Disclaimer, the content on this channel is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any of the anime footage used in my videos. All rights and credits go to their respective creators and copyright holders. Let's get started. A whisper in the sand. The sun dipped low over the hidden sand village, casting long shadows across the golden dunes. Naruko Uzumaki stood at the edge of the village gates, her arms crossed and a determined sparkle in her sky-blue eyes. She had been sent as a representative from the Hidden Leaf for a peace-building mission, but Naruko had a different goal in mind too, understanding the quiet, serious Kazekage named Gaara. He was so different from her, calm, reserved, and always watching everything like he carried the weight of the desert on his shoulders. She was loud, full of energy, and laughed without a care in the world. But somewhere in those differences, she saw something familiar. When they first met, Gaara barely spoke. Naruko tried cracking jokes, making faces, even offering him a bowl of her best instant ramen, but he only blinked, confused. Still, she kept trying. Every day, she'd visit the Kazekage Tower and find a reason to talk. Sometimes about nothing at all, clouds, sandstorms, frogs. And slowly, Gaara started replying. One evening, they sat atop the tallest rooftop in the village, watching the stars. The desert was quiet, but Naruko's voice was soft. "You know, I used to be really lonely," she said. "I thought if I just kept smiling, I wouldn't feel it. But I did." Gaara turned toward her. "Me too. I used to think no one could ever understand me." Naruko gave him a small grin. "Guess you were wrong, huh?" He gave the faintest smile, tiny, but real. Over the next few weeks, they trained together, shared stories, and learned from one another. Naruko taught Gaara how to make shadow clones that could do chores, which Tamari greatly appreciated, and Gaara showed Naruko how to move silently through sand, like a breeze. One afternoon, as they walked through a quiet canyon, Gaara paused. "You make the silence feel different," he said quietly. Naruko tilted her head. "Different how?" "Warmer," he answered, then glanced away, as if unsure he'd said too much. Naruko blushed, her cheeks matching her red scarf. "Well, you're not so bad yourself, sand guy." Their fingers brushed as they walked, and neither pulled away. It wasn't a fairy tale kind of love. It was gentle, honest, and built like a sandcastle, patiently, layer by layer, held strong by trust. Even when Naruko had to return to the leaf, they promised to write letters, to visit, and to keep walking forward, together, even from afar. And in the middle of the desert, where once there was only silence and sand, now there was laughter, and the soft echo of a heart that had learned how to love. Naruko's return to the Hidden Leaf was full of hugs, noisy welcomes, and, of course, bowls and bowls of ramen at Ichiraku. But even in the middle of all the excitement, her thoughts often drifted back to the desert, the wind in her hair, the golden sun, and the boy with seafoam eyes who used to be afraid of the world. She wrote letters to Gaara every few days. At first, they were a little clumsy. "Hey Gaara. I saw a fat raccoon today and thought of you. Not because you're fat. I mean, you used to have a raccoon spirit, right? Anyway. Hope you're not sitting in the office too long. Stand up and stretch. Naruko." Gaara's replies were short but sincere. "Thank you for the reminder. I had not stood up in 3 hours. I will look for a raccoon next time I visit the leaf." Over time, the letters grew longer. They shared training tips, funny mission stories, and even drawings. Naruko sent doodles of frogs doing karate, and Gaara sent back sketches of sand gardens he made when he needed to think. Months passed, and the day finally came when Gaara was scheduled to visit the Hidden Leaf for a cage summit. Naruko stood at the village gates, bouncing on her heels. When Gaara arrived, flanked by Kankuro and Tamari, his expression didn't change, but Naruko noticed something, the tiniest twitch at the corners of his mouth. "Naruko," he said. "Gaara." She grinned. "Took you long enough." They spent the whole day walking through the leaf. She showed him her favorite training grounds, her apartment, which was messier than she meant it to be, and even dragged him to Ichiraku, where he quietly ate his first bowl of ramen. His only comment was, "I understand now." That night, As they sat on the Hokage monument watching the lights of the village, Naruko pulled out a little paper frog from her pocket. I made this for you. He's brave. Like you. Gaara took it gently. Thank you. I'll keep it. They sat in silence again, the kind that didn't feel empty anymore. I'm glad we met, Gaara said suddenly, surprising them both. Naruko's heart thumped. Me too. And then, very softly, Gaara reached out and held her hand. She didn't say anything. She just squeezed back. There were still battles to fight, dreams to chase, and villages to protect. But through it all, they had each other, two kids who had once been alone, now walking through the world side by side. From the sand to the leaves, their bond grew strong, not just as shinobi, but as friends, and maybe, just maybe, something even more. The summit came and went, filled with important discussions and serious speeches, but Naruko and Gaara found quiet moments in between, sharing lunch on the Hokage roof, exchanging glances during long meetings, and once, even sneaking out late at night just to look at the stars again. Before Gaara left the hidden leaf, he handed Naruko something small wrapped in cloth. She opened it carefully and gasped, a tiny glass bottle, filled with golden sand. It's from the edge of the desert, Gaara said. Where the sun hits the dunes just right. Naruko held it up to the light, and the sand shimmered like treasure. I'll keep it close, she promised. When Gaara returned to the sand village, things felt quieter again, but not in a lonely way. He placed the little paper frog Naruko gave him on his desk, right next to his gourd. Sometimes when the paperwork piled too high or the days felt too long, he'd glance at it and remember her laughter, her warmth. And far away, in the leaf, Naruko kept the bottle of sand on her nightstand. Before every mission, she'd look at it, smile, and whisper, "Wish me luck, desert boy." Their bond became something the villagers noticed too. When they worked together on missions, things just clicked. Naruko's boldness and energy balanced Gaara's calm strategy. They moved like a team that had trained together for years. Even the younger ninjas began whispering. Did you see the way they looked at each other? Do you think they'll get married one day? Shh, don't ruin it. But Naruko and Gaara didn't need to rush. What they had was slow and strong, like the wind carving patterns into the desert, day by day. One day, after a joint mission to protect a traveling village festival, Naruko stood under a lantern-lit tree, laughing as children dragged Gaara into a game of tag. He ran stiffly at first, unsure, but when he looked back at Naruko, his eyes softened. She gave him a thumbs up, and he actually smiled. When the festival ended and the stars rose again, Naruko walked beside him, their shoulders brushing. You're getting good at this, she teased. At what? He asked. She grinned. Living. Gaara didn't say anything right away. He just looked at her, the flicker of lanterns dancing in his eyes. I think. You're the reason I can. Naruko blinked, surprised. Then she bumped his arm with hers. Well, you helped me learn too. So now we're even. He nodded, and once again, their hands found each other. No need for big speeches. Just two hearts learning how to be whole, with sand and sunshine, stars and shadow, and a love as quiet and strong as the desert wind. Years passed, and both Naruko and Gaara became pillars of their villages. The hidden leaf had flourished under Naruko's leadership, her unshakable optimism and drive inspiring the ninjas she commanded. Gaara, too, had grown into a wise and respected Kazekage. The sand village had become more prosperous and peaceful under his steady hand. But despite the growing responsibilities that came with leadership, they always made time for each other. Sometimes, it was a quiet letter sent between the villages, other times it was an exchange of rare gifts. A small jar of cherry blossom petals from the leaf. A pouch of desert herbs from the sand. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Naruko found herself on the Hokage roof once more, staring out over the village she had spent so many years protecting. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the buildings below. She sighed, a rare moment of quiet in the whirlwind of her duties. A familiar voice broke the silence. Hard to let go of the past, isn't it? Naruko turned, her heart lifting when she saw Gaara standing in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the fading light. He was older now, his expression still calm but filled with a warmth that only Naruko seemed to bring out of him. I was just thinking about how far we've come, she said, smiling as he approached. Gaara nodded, his steps slow, measured. He had always been someone who didn't rush things, especially now. He had learned over the years to savor the present, and moments like these were becoming more precious to him. He stood beside her, both of them gazing at the village below. I remember the first time I came here, Gaara said quietly. You were just a kid back then, but you always had that fire. That light. Naruko laughed softly. You say that, but it was your calm that kept me from burning out. There was a pause, a shared understanding between them. You've done more than just keep me grounded, Gaara said, turning slightly to face her. You've helped me become the man I am today. Naruko's eyes softened, her gaze meeting his. We've both changed a lot, haven't we? We have, Gaara agreed, his voice steady, but there was a flicker of emotion there. But I think we've always known that the other was a part of that change. No matter how much the world shifts, there's something constant between us. Naruko smiled, the familiar warmth flooding her chest. I think you're right. I guess I'll always be that loud, stubborn, messy person, and you'll always be that calm, quiet soul. But we fit, don't we? Gaara's lips quirked up at the edges, a faint smile. We do. They stood in companionable silence, the stars slowly starting to appear as the night took over. A cool breeze stirred the air, and for a moment, the world felt peaceful. The same peace they had both worked so hard to protect. You know, Naruko said, her voice light, sometimes I still think about that bottle of sand you gave me. Gaara glanced at her, curious. Whenever I'm feeling uncertain or like I'm carrying too much weight on my shoulders, I hold it and remember that moment. It reminds me that no matter what happens, there's always something beautiful in the world. Something worth fighting for. Gaara's gaze softened, his expression unreadable for a moment before he spoke again. And I still have the frog you gave me. Sometimes, when everything feels overwhelming, I look at it, and it reminds me of you. Of how you helped me learn that it's okay to feel. To be human. Naruko chuckled softly. I didn't know I was such a good influence. Gaara met her eyes, his voice barely above a whisper. You've always been more than that. Without saying another word, Gaara reached out and took her hand. Their fingers intertwined, not with urgency, but with a quiet certainty. There was no need for declarations anymore, no grand speeches. The bond between them was something they had built together over the years, a slow, steady thing, like the desert wind shaping the sands. They didn't need to speak further. Their bond had already spoken volumes. And in that shared silence, as they stood side by side beneath the stars, Naruko knew that no matter where life took them, they would always be there for each other. Together, even across the distance between their villages, their hearts beat in the same rhythm. When they eventually parted that evening, Naruko stood at the doorway of the Hokage Tower and looked back over her shoulder, as if to savor the moment a little longer. I'll see you soon, desert boy, she said softly, the words carrying with them the weight of years and promises. Gaara's voice followed her, steady as ever. I'll be waiting, Leaf Girl. And with that, they returned to their respective villages, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together, leaders, friends, and something more. One day, after a long series of meetings that had left both of them a bit too serious for comfort, Naruko and Gaara found themselves in an unusual situation. It was one of those rare moments when they had a bit of downtime, and Naruko insisted they take a break from the endless flow of paperwork and diplomacy. Let's go for a walk, Naruko suggested with an infectious grin. You need to relax, Gaara. You've been holed up in that office too long. Gaara raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical of the idea. I don't know. I have a lot of things to do. Oh, come on, just one walk, Naruko interrupted, already dragging him out of the room. You'll feel better, trust me. He sighed but allowed himself to be pulled along, not one to resist her energy for long. As they strolled through the village, the conversation shifted from politics to something lighter. They passed a group of young ninja in training who were practicing some basic jutsu, and Naruko couldn't resist the urge to show off a bit. Hey, Gaara. Want to see something cool? She asked, already getting into position. Gaara gave her a wary look, clearly expecting something unpredictable. I'm not sure this is the best time for you two. Don't worry. I got this. Naruko grinned and threw her hands up, preparing a simple, flashy fire jutsu. She had meant to send a small, harmless burst of fire into the air, just to show off a bit. But as always, her enthusiasm got the better of her. What was supposed to be a tiny fireball shot up like a rocket, making an impressive whoosh sound as it soared, only to ricochet off a nearby tree and land in a small bush that caught fire. Oops, Naruko said, her face flushing a little. Gaara blinked, his usual calm demeanor now tinged with a slight look of disbelief. You've been Hokage for how many years, and you still can't control your jutsu? Naruko scratched her head sheepishly. Hey, that wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't mean to set anything on fire. Right, Gaara deadpanned, stepping forward with his sand immediately swirling around him. He waved a hand, and in an instant, the small fire was extinguished without a trace. He turned back to Naruko, who was trying to stifle her giggles. I suppose that's one way to make a point, though. Naruko couldn't help it, she burst out laughing. Okay. Maybe I'm not as perfect as everyone thinks. But I promise, that was just a minor slip-up. Gaara couldn't keep a straight face either. Despite himself, the corners of his lips twitched up into a faint smile. I think I'll stick to my method of using sand. Seems safer. They walked in silence for a moment, until Naruko, still giggling, nudged him with her elbow. You're lucky you're here, or I'd have had to try to explain that to the villagers, she teased. I bet they'd love to hear about the Hokage setting the forest on fire. Gaara raised an eyebrow but couldn't help but laugh, the sound rare but genuine. I suppose that would be a good story. You would have made a great storyteller, Gaara, she grinned, if you ever wanted to retire from being Kazekage. His lips quirked up again, this time more openly. I think I'll leave the storytelling to you, Naruko. You seem much more talented at it. They shared another laugh, the tension of the day slipping away as they continued their walk, with Gaara occasionally looking over at her, still shaking his head. No more fire jutsu for today, all right? He asked, though his voice had softened with humor. Naruko raised her hands in mock surrender. I promise, I'll stick to shadow clones from now on. Much safer for everyone. I'll believe it when I see it, Gaara replied with a smirk. And for once, it felt like they could forget about the weight of their roles for just a little while, able to laugh at their own mistakes, knowing the bond they shared could handle even the smallest of fires. As the day stretched on, the two of them wandered deeper into the village, their conversation shifting between light-hearted teasing and the occasional reflection on their duties. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden hue over the rooftops of the Hidden Leaf. Naruko, still on a bit of a high from her fire jutsu mishap, couldn't help but playfully prod Gaara. Gaara, we should do something really daring next time. Maybe we could go on a mission together or... Gaara cut her off, raising an eyebrow. Daring? I thought we were supposed to be relaxing. Oh, come on. Relaxing can be daring, Naruko grinned. I mean, when was the last time you did something spontaneous? Gaara considered this for a moment, his lips pursing as if he was about to offer a thoughtful rebuttal. I suppose my idea of spontaneous is a bit different from yours. Naruko pouted dramatically, crossing her arms over her chest. What's that supposed to mean? I can be spontaneous. Gaara glanced at her, a flicker of humor in his eyes. You were the one who nearly set the village on fire just a few minutes ago. That's not what I'd call spontaneous, that's more like explosive enthusiasm. Explosive enthusiasm, she repeated, her eyes narrowing as she processed the words. Huh. I like that. Sounds like me. Gaara, with a very rare but entirely deliberate smirk, added, and sometimes, the explosions aren't as well, controlled as you think. Oh, so now you're picking on me? Naruko raised her hands in mock surrender. Fine. I'll keep my fiery spirit under control, for now. Gaara's smirk softened into a genuine, rare smile. For now, he agreed. But I'll believe it when I see it. They continued walking, the atmosphere between them light and relaxed, with the occasional chuckle breaking through the calm. As they passed a small cafe, the smell of freshly baked goods wafted into the air, and Naruko's stomach rumbled loudly. Did you hear that? Naruko said, giving Gaara a playful glance. I think it's telling us we need a snack. Gaara chuckled softly, the sound warm and unguarded. I suppose it's been a long day. Naruko grinned. I think I've earned a treat for all that fire taming I did today. Fire taming, Gaara repeated dryly, shaking his head but giving in. All right, I'll get you a snack. But no more setting things on fire, okay? Deal, Naruko said, and they both walked into the cafe, Naruko's energy bouncing back as she eyed the selection of sweets. While they waited for their order, Naruko suddenly turned to Gaara with a mischievous glint in her eyes. Gaara, there's one thing I've been wondering about. Gaara raised an eyebrow. What's that? If you could pick one jutsu to learn, just for fun, Naruko said, leaning forward, what would it be? Gaara's expression didn't change, though he clearly hadn't expected the question. He thought about it for a moment before answering, his voice steady but with a hint of curiosity. I suppose I'd want to learn how to summon. Something completely unexpected. Something unpredictable. Like what? Naruko asked, intrigued. Gaara's lips curled slightly at the edges. A giant frog. Or maybe a cat. Naruko burst out laughing at the image of Gaara, stoic as ever, summoning a massive, grumpy cat in the middle of a battle. A cat? You? I can't even picture it. Why not? Gaara said, his voice deceptively calm. It would be a perfect companion. It could keep watch over the village, and I wouldn't have to do anything. Naruko wiped away a tear of laughter. You're right. A lazy, sassy cat would definitely suit your style. Gaara paused, looking thoughtful for a moment. I suppose a cat could teach me patience. Well, that's true, Naruko agreed, her tone light. If you can survive a cat's attitude, you can survive anything. They both laughed together, their laughter mingling in the warm evening air. As their food arrived, they settled into a comfortable silence, enjoying each other's company. As they sat there, Gaara glanced over at Naruko with a faint, almost imperceptible smile. I suppose it's not all that bad. This whole spontaneous thing you're always going on about. Naruko raised an eyebrow. Wait, are you admitting I was right? Gaara just looked at her, his usual stoic demeanor in place. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But I will admit that today was better than I expected. Naruko's eyes sparkled with amusement, and she leaned across the table, giving him a playful nudge. Oh, Gaara, you're so full of surprises. He met her eyes, his gaze warm despite his usual calm exterior. And you, he said softly, are full of fire. The two of them shared a look, both knowing that no matter how unpredictable or chaotic their lives became, they would always have these moments. Moments of laughter, of connection, and of shared understanding. Even in the quiet, even in the chaos, they were there for each other. And in that small cafe, surrounded by the hum of life and the fading light of day, Naruko and Gaara both knew, sometimes, the best moments were the ones you never expected. As the night drew on, the two of them lingered over their snacks, the quiet hum of the cafe almost like a backdrop to their shared silence. The bustling sounds of the hidden leaf village outside seemed far away, a distant murmur compared to the comfortable peace between them. Naruko, her mood lighter than it had been all day, leaned back in her chair, looking out the window with a thoughtful expression. You know, Gaara. Sometimes I forget what it's like to just be normal. To just sit here, not worrying about the next mission or the next big decision. It feels nice. Gaara, his fingers tapping lightly on the edge of his cup, nodded. It's easy to get caught up in everything. But moments like these small, quiet moments, are important. Naruko smiled, her heart warmed by his rare, reflective tone. Yeah. I think I've always had a hard time with that. Slowing down, letting myself breathe for a moment. He met her gaze, his voice steady but genuine. I think you're better at it than you realize. It's in the way you lead, how you inspire the village to keep moving forward, no matter what. Even when you're pushing yourself, you still find a way to give others that chance. Naruko's smile softened, her eyes glimmering with gratitude. You always know just what to say, don't you? Gaara merely shrugged, a faint, almost bashful smile crossing his face. I've learned a few things over the years. For a moment, they both sat in companionable silence again, the weight of their words hanging between them like an unspoken promise. The quiet wasn't uncomfortable, instead, it felt like an understanding shared only between the two of them, one forged in years of friendship, challenges, and mutual respect. Finally, Naruko broke the silence with a mischievous grin. So, about that cat. You really want one, huh? Gaara blinked, caught off guard by the sudden shift. You're not going to let that go, are you? Not a chance, she replied, her tone teasing. I can just picture it now, Kazekage Gaara, summoning a giant, lazy cat in front of everyone. It would totally throw them off. They'd be so distracted by the cat that they'd forget you were the most powerful leader in the room. Gaara's stoic expression faltered for a split second, and then he gave her a look that could almost be described as resigned. It would make for an interesting diplomatic meeting, I suppose. Naruko laughed, nearly spilling her drink in the process. See? I knew you'd see the appeal. You could be like the coolest Kazekage ever, sand and a cat. Gaara shook his head, though a smile tugged at his lips. Maybe I'll stick to sand for now. I don't want to be remembered for having a pet. No matter how impressive it may be. Fair enough, Naruko said, though her eyes were still dancing with laughter. But I'm still going to bug you about it. You know that, right? Gaara's gaze softened as he leaned back in his chair. I wouldn't expect anything less. They shared another quiet moment, the kind that didn't need words to feel meaningful. In the midst of their duties, their villages, and their leadership roles, these rare moments of connection became treasures, ones they didn't take for granted. As the last remnants of their snacks were finished and the stars outside began to twinkle brightly in the clear night sky, Naruko stood up, stretching. "All right, I should probably get back to work," she said, grinning. "You're lucky I gave you a break from my Hokage duties today." Gaara stood with her, his usual calm composure returning. "I should be heading back to the sand as well. A few reports await me." Naruko laughed, rolling her eyes. Yeah, I know. A Kazekage's work is never done." She paused, then smiled warmly at him. "Thanks for today, Gaara. Really? It's been nice." He gave a rare nod of acknowledgement, his gaze steady. "It's always good to see you, Naruko. Even when things get chaotic." Naruko grinned playfully. "Chaotic? I thought we were talking about relaxing." "Relaxation," Gaara said dryly, "is still a foreign concept to you, I think." She gave him a teasing shove. "Hey, I can be relaxed. Sometimes." Gaara's lips twitched again, his eyes reflecting the humor they both shared. "I'll believe it when I see it." They both walked out of the cafe together, the cool night air sweeping past them. As they stood in front of the Hokage Tower, Naruko turned to Gaara one last time. "I guess this is goodbye for now, huh?" Gaara nodded, the weight of their parting moment hanging gently in the air. "I'll be waiting, Leaf Girl." Naruko smiled brightly, the words carrying the same warmth they always had. "And I'll be back, Desert Boy. Always." With that, they parted ways, Naruko heading up toward the Hokage Tower, while Gaara made his way to the Sand's gates. Though their villages were far apart, there was an unspoken certainty between them. They would always find their way back to each other, no matter the distance, the time, or the challenges that lay ahead. Their bond had been tested in many ways over the years, but it remained steady, grounded in laughter, shared experiences, and a deep understanding that no matter what role they played, they would always be there for each other. And in the quiet night, as the village slept peacefully under the stars, Naruko and Gaara both knew, some connections, no matter how far apart they seemed, would never fade. It was a rare moment of calm, a lull in the flurry of their respective duties. Gaara had sent a message to Naruko earlier in the week, inviting her to the Sand Village for a brief visit. The letter was simple, almost formal, but there was an underlying tone of something warmer in it, something that suggested that Gaara, despite his usual reserved nature, wanted to share a part of his life with her that few ever got to see. Naruko arrived at the gates of the Sand Village early one afternoon, her excitement barely contained. The towering, golden sand dunes stretched across the horizon, and the vibrant, bustling village nestled against the desert's vastness felt like a world all its own. Gaara was there to greet her at the gates, as stoic as always, but there was a glint of something different in his eyes, a small, quiet pride. "Welcome to Suna," he said, giving her a rare smile. Naruko grinned, her energy undiminished even after the long journey. "It's even hotter than I imagined. How do you stand it?" She fanned herself dramatically, though there was no denying the awe in her voice as she took in the vast desert landscape. "It's home," Gaara said simply, his expression softening. "You get used to it." She followed him through the village, admiring the sights and sounds of the sand, the markets full of colorful fabrics, spices, and goods from all over the land. The village felt different than the Leaf, more restrained, yet there was a quiet strength to it, a reflection of Gaara himself. As they walked, she couldn't help but ask, "So, where are we going first?" Gaara looked at her for a moment, his eyes reflecting an unfamiliar hesitation. "I wanted to introduce you to my family." Naruko blinked, surprised. "Your family? You mean your siblings?" She could hardly believe it. Gaara had told her stories of them in passing, but never in detail. She knew about Kankuro and Tamari, of course, but had never met them. Gaara gave a subtle nod. "Yes. They've heard a lot about you, and I think it's time you met them." Naruko felt a little nervous. Meeting family was always a big deal, but she didn't want to let Gaara see how much she was actually sweating it out. "All right, well, no big deal, right? Just a casual introduction to the Kazekage's family." Gaara's lips quirked slightly, as if he was trying to suppress a smile. "Just don't let Kankuro talk your ear off. He likes to tease." "Tease? Me?" Naruko replied, raising an eyebrow. "I can handle him." They approached a modest building near the center of the village, which was both familiar and warm. As they entered, the distinct sound of a child's laughter echoed through the halls. Gaara led her into a cozy sitting room, where his siblings were already waiting. Tamari, the eldest, was seated by a table, her blonde hair tied up in her usual style, her eyes sharp but not unkind. Kankuro, the mischievous middle child, leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, his mask as ever present as his smirk. And then, there was a smaller figure sitting on the floor, Shikadai, Tamari's son, who had clearly inherited his mother's intelligence and her fiery attitude. "Hey, Gaara." Kankuro greeted him first, giving his older brother a playful shove before turning to Naruko. "So this is the famous Hokage. I've heard a lot about you. Mostly from Kankuro's not-so-flattering stories, of course." Gaara rolled his eyes, but there was a quiet warmth in the way he looked at his brother. "Kankuro," he said with a sigh. "It's good to see you too." Naruko couldn't help but laugh at the casual dynamic between them. "I can handle Kankuro's stories, don't worry," she said with a wink, "I've heard worse." Tamari gave a soft, amused laugh. "It's nice to finally meet you, Naruko," she said, standing up and offering her hand. "Gaara doesn't talk about much, but when he does, it's usually about people who really matter. So, I'm glad to put a face to the name." Naruko smiled, grateful for Tamari's warm welcome, and shook her hand. "It's great to meet you, too. Gaara's told me a lot about you, how you're the one keeping everyone in line." Tamari smirked. "That's the job of the eldest, I guess. Someone has to keep the boys from causing too much trouble." Shikadai, who had been quietly observing the conversation, looked up from where he was sitting, his gaze curious but thoughtful. "Are you really the Hokage?" he asked, his voice serious for a child so young. Naruko crouched down to his level, smiling warmly. "I am. You're Shikadai, right? Gaara's told me about you." Shikadai nodded, his eyes bright with curiosity. "What's it like being in charge of a whole village?" Naruko thought for a moment, then leaned in slightly, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "It's a lot of work, but I've got some really great people around me to help out. You know, a village is like a big family, you can't do it alone." Shikadai seemed to consider this for a moment, his expression serious before he gave a small nod. "I think I could do that too. I like taking care of people." Naruko smiled at him, impressed by his maturity. "I think you'd make a great leader one day, Shikadai." Kankuro rolled his eyes from his spot against the wall. "Oh, great. Now we've got another one who's going to start trying to boss us around," he teased, nudging Gaara. Gaara didn't rise to the bait, though. Instead, he looked at Naruko, and for a moment, she saw something in his eyes, a quiet pride, not just for his family, but for the connection that was unfolding between them. "Thank you for coming, Naruko," Gaara said softly, his voice quieter than usual. Naruko's heart warmed at the sincerity in his tone. "Thanks for inviting me, Gaara. It's nice to see this side of you. I'm glad I finally got to meet your family." Tamari, sensing the quiet moment, gave her brother a teasing smile. "You've definitely made an impression, Naruko. Gaara doesn't bring just anyone around here." Kankuro snorted. "Yeah, he's always so picky about who gets to see the Kazekage's family. I thought we were going to have to pass some sort of test or something before he let you in." Naruko laughed at that, feeling more at ease with each passing moment. "Well, I guess I passed," she said, glancing over at Gaara, who was giving his brother a warning look. "But if there's a test, I'll take it." Gaara's gaze softened, though his usual calm demeanor was still present. "You've already passed, Naruko," he said quietly, his eyes meeting hers. "You've already proven that you're someone worth having in my life." And for a moment, the world around them seemed to still. Naruko could feel the weight of his words, and in that moment, she understood. Gaara wasn't just sharing his family with her, he was letting her into his life in a way that few had ever been allowed. The quiet bond between them grew stronger as they laughed and shared stories with his family. The afternoon faded into evening, and the warmth of the sand village, coupled with the closeness of his siblings, filled the air with a sense of belonging. It was a new kind of comfort for Naruko, one where she didn't need to be Hokage, didn't need to be anyone other than herself. She was simply there with them, family, in every sense of the word. As the day went on, Naruko quickly realized that her visit to Gaara's family wasn't just about meeting his siblings, it was also an opportunity to experience a part of the sand village that few ever did, the food. The idea was simple, a small, casual dinner to give Naruko a real taste of life in Suna. And of course, Gaara had one more thing to add to the mix, something she hadn't quite anticipated. "All right," Gaara began, his tone somewhat awkward, "I thought it would be nice if you could join us for dinner tonight. But, well, there's a catch." Naruko raised an eyebrow, already suspecting something was off. "A catch? What, you're not gonna make me eat more of your weird desert food, are you? Gaara's lips twitched at her teasing. Actually, no. But we thought it might be fun for you to cook dinner for us. Naruko blinked, caught off guard. Wait, what? You want me to cook? Do you even know what you're asking for, Gaara? Gaara shrugged, his expression the same as always. You're a Hokage, right? I assumed you'd know how to handle a kitchen. And Temari and Kankuro have been. Well, not the most skilled cooks. Temari smirked, her arms crossed as she leaned against the doorway. Don't let him fool you. I'm a great cook. Gaara just has no appreciation for good food. Naruko laughed, her nerves settling a little. I'm definitely not going to turn down a challenge. I've cooked for myself plenty back in the Leaf. But cooking for the Kazekage's family? Now that's a first. Kankuro, always the one to poke fun, raised an eyebrow. I don't know, Gaara. You're giving her a lot of power here. What if she decides to put spicy stuff in everything? Naruko grinned. Spicy? You mean like this? Without warning, she grabbed a handful of the dried chili peppers that Temari had on the counter and held them up to Kankuro. Don't say I didn't warn you. Kankuro immediately recoiled, holding up his hands in mock defense. All right. You're the boss. No spicy stuff for me. Promise. Gaara watched the banter with a slight tilt of his head, his usual calm demeanor only softening when he noticed how easily Naruko fit in with his family. She had a way of lightening the mood, making everything feel more comfortable. It was a side of her he had only seen in private moments. Now, he was witnessing it in full force with his own family. So what are we making, then? Naruko asked, her eyes scanning the kitchen, eager to get started. Gaara glanced at her, a small smirk tugging at his lips. Well, I thought we could start with something simple. Maybe a traditional dish from the Leaf. Something that feels a bit like home. Naruko's eyes brightened. Ooh, you mean like ramen? Gaara nodded. Ramen sounds perfect. Naruko's heart warmed at the idea. Ramen was something that had always brought people together in the Hidden Leaf, and the thought of sharing it with Gaara's family made her feel a deeper connection to this desert village. All right, let's get to work, Naruko said, her hands already moving toward the counter as she began pulling out ingredients. She was in her element now, the Hokage persona momentarily slipping away as she focused on the task at hand. Her movements were confident, practiced, but there was a lightness in her that came from simply enjoying the process of cooking. Temari watched her for a moment, raising an eyebrow. I have to admit, I didn't expect the Hokage to be so skilled in the kitchen. Naruko chuckled as she began to prepare the broth. Oh, trust me. When you're always running around, dealing with missions and meetings, you learn how to make food quickly. And besides, ramen's easy. You just need to know how to get the flavors right. Kankuro sidled up to her, looking intrigued. So, what's your secret, Hokage? How do you make ramen taste like you've spent all day on it, when it's only been, 15 minutes? Naruko winked at him as she chopped vegetables. The secret is all in the broth. You gotta let it simmer for just the right amount of time, then finish it off with a little extra something. And of course, the toppings. They make all the difference. Kankuro seemed skeptical but kept his distance as the aromatic sense of simmering broth filled the air. Meanwhile, Gaara watched her work, clearly impressed by her confidence. It was different from what he was used to, but there was something about the way she moved, so sure of herself, even when she was outside the realm of leadership. The way she brought joy to something as simple as cooking was something he hadn't expected. You're doing it all wrong, Temari suddenly said with a grin, standing behind Naruko and reaching for a bowl of miso paste. Naruko whipped around, hands on her hips. Hey! What are you trying to do, sabotage me? Temari raised an eyebrow, playing it cool. Just making sure the ramen turns out perfect. We don't want Kankuro to complain about bland food again. Naruko let out a laugh. I don't think he'll be able to complain this time. She stirred the broth, her face lighting up with concentration. You'll see. This is going to be the best ramen you've ever had. Soon enough, the ingredients came together, and the rich smell of the broth enveloped the room. Gaara and his siblings crowded around the counter as Naruko plated the ramen, topping each bowl with the perfect amount of shashu, soft-boiled eggs, and green onions. All right, Naruko said, setting down the last bowl. You guys ready for the best ramen in all of the 5 nations? Temari took the first bowl, not bothering with utensils as she immediately took a bite. Her eyes widened, and a small smile tugged at her lips. Well, I'll be damned. This is actually pretty good. Kankuro dove in next, slurping the noodles with exaggerated enthusiasm. Okay. I'll admit it. This is definitely better than my last attempt. Shikadai, who had been watching the exchange with interest, took a tentative bite. His eyes lit up. This is really good. It's different from what we usually eat here. But in a good way. Gaara, ever the last to speak, took his bowl and tasted it in silence. When he set the bowl down, there was a quiet, almost imperceptible smile on his face. It's good, he said simply, his voice filled with genuine appreciation. Naruko grinned proudly, leaning back against the counter. I'm glad you like it. Tamari chuckled, nudging her brother. So, what did I tell you? She's got skills. Kankuro just shrugged, still busy savoring his ramen. I didn't say she didn't. And in that moment, as they all sat down together, Gaara, Tamari, Kankuro, Shikadai, and Naruko, there was a sense of warmth and camaraderie that felt more like family than anything else. It was a simple meal, shared among friends and family, but it was a moment that spoke volumes. For Naruko, it was the kind of bond she'd always hoped to form, one not based on titles or duty, but on something far simpler: food, laughter, and being together. After dinner, the sun had long dipped behind the desert horizon, leaving the sky painted in shades of pink and orange. The air was cooler now, and the quiet stillness of the desert evening set in. Gaara's home had the warm glow of soft lanterns hanging from the walls, casting a golden hue over everything. Tamari and Kankuro were lounging around the low tables in the living room, still enjoying their bowls of ramen and chatting casually. Naruko, feeling the light-hearted atmosphere, leaned back against the cushions, a contented sigh escaping her lips. This was amazing, you guys. You're definitely going to have to come to the Leaf sometime so I can return the favor. Gaara, ever observant, glanced at her. I'm sure they'd love that. Kankuro, who was still eating with dramatic flair, grinned mischievously. You're not getting off that easy. You've been talking about cooking for us all day. Now that we've seen the magic firsthand, you're going to have to show us a lot more when you come. Naruko laughed. I'm up for the challenge. Just be prepared for a lot of ramen. I don't know how to make anything else that well. Tamari raised an eyebrow, looking at Naruko thoughtfully. Well, I think we might need a little more than ramen if we're going to spend a whole trip with you in the Leaf. How about we do something a little more fun instead? Oh? Like what? Naruko asked, genuinely intrigued. Tamari looked over at Gaara, then back at Naruko. I'm guessing the Hokage isn't all about leadership, right? Let's play something. Something that doesn't involve high-level strategy or national security. Naruko's eyes lit up. A game? I'm in. What do you have in mind? Kankuro stood up, rubbing his hands together in an exaggerated manner. I've got just the thing. How about a good old-fashioned game of ninja trivia? He was clearly excited by the idea, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Naruko immediately burst out laughing. Oh, this'll be good. Are you sure you want to test me on ninja trivia, Kankuro? I am the Hokage, after all. Kankuro grinned slyly. We'll see if all that leadership makes you a master of trivia, Hokage-chan. Get ready to lose. Gaara, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. I'll sit this one out. But I'll keep score. Tamari snorted. He's going to keep score, all right. More like he's going to enjoy watching you two try to outdo each other. Naruko, feeling competitive, rolled up her sleeves. All right, bring it on. I'm ready. Kankuro started the game, pulling out a small scroll filled with questions and reading the first one aloud. Question 1. Who was the first Hokage? Naruko didn't even hesitate. Hashirama Senju. Easy. Kankuro smirked but quickly moved on to the next question. All right, so you're a history buff. Let's see how you do with this one. Who is the current leader of the Hidden Mist? Naruko thought for a moment, furrowing her brows. Kiri, huh? I think it's Mei Terumi? Kankuro nodded, impressed. Okay, you're on fire. But now we're getting serious. He grinned widely. Who's the fastest shinobi alive? Naruko blinked. The fastest shinobi alive? That's gotta be Minato, right? The fourth Hokage? Kankuro's eyes widened. Nope. You're wrong. It's the Yellow Flash. But I meant myself, he laughed, clearly enjoying her reaction. Naruko rolled her eyes. Okay, you got me. I was too focused on the real fast guys, like Minato, not someone who thinks he is the fastest. Tamari chuckled from the side. Yeah, Kankuro, we all know you can't outrun the desert wind. Kankuro threw up his hands in mock offense. Fine, fine. Just for that, next round, you're getting a real tough question. Naruko was already smiling, eyes gleaming with challenge. Bring it. The game continued with more questions flying back and forth. They moved from ninja history to obscure facts about villages, famous jutsu, and legendary shinobi. Tamari joined in the banter, occasionally throwing in her own questions for fun, while Gaara kept a quiet, amused eye on the proceedings. Eventually, Kankuro came up with his last question. Alright, here's the ultimate test. Who won the Fourth Great Ninja War? Naruko grinned confidently. We did. The allied shinobi forces, with the help of Naruto Uzumaki, of course. Kankuro pretended to pout. Okay. I was trying to trip you up with a Naruto reference. Nice try, Naruko said with a wink. But if you're going to play trivia with the Hokage, you better make the questions harder. Kankuro grinned, clearly pleased with her quick answers, but then he shook his head. Well, I guess you win this round. For now. Naruko laughed. I'll let you try again next time. With that, they decided to break for another game, something that would involve everyone. Tamari stood up, her eyes glinting with mischief. Okay. Let's play something a little more physical. How about a ninja obstacle course? Naruko's eyes widened with excitement. Obstacle course? Now that's more like it. I'm in. The family members quickly cleared the living room and set up an impromptu obstacle course using whatever they could find. There were pillows to jump over, chairs to duck under, and even a line of ninja headbands to balance on. Kankuro took charge of the course layout, while Gaara and Tamari worked together to judge the participants. Alright, Kankuro said with a grin, the rules are simple. You have to navigate the course in under a minute. And if you fall off the headbands, you have to start again. Naruko, her energy bouncing off the walls, was ready. I've got this, she said, bouncing on her heels. I'll show you all how it's done. Tamari raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? You're dealing with sand and desert heat here, not just the forest training ground. I've got it covered, Naruko said, giving her a playful wink. One by one, they all took turns navigating the obstacle course. Kankuro went first, trying to show off his ninja agility but failing miserably by tripping over the pillows. Tamari was next, completing it with ease, but only by taking a few shortcuts. Gaara, ever the calm one, did it effortlessly, his movements measured and fluid. When it was Naruko's turn, she approached the starting line with determination. Ready? Gaara asked, a rare, amused smile curling at the corners of his lips. Born ready, she replied, grinning. She launched into the course with speed and agility, leaping over the pillows, darting under the chairs, and balancing on the headbands with perfect precision. The family watched in awe as she completed the entire course in record time, her energy and determination palpable. Ha! Beat that, Naruko exclaimed, crossing her arms triumphantly. Tamari laughed. Alright, Hokage. I think you just won this one. You're officially the fastest ninja in the room. Kankuro raised his hands in defeat. Okay. You've got me beat. But I'll definitely come up with a tougher course next time. Naruko beamed, looking around at Gaara and his family, all of them laughing and cheering. It felt good to be here, to share moments like these with people who had come to mean so much to her. It wasn't just the village she'd fought for that mattered. It was moments like this, simple and joyous, that made all the effort worthwhile. As they settled down after the games, Gaara sat next to her, his usual calm returned, though there was a spark of warmth in his eyes. I'm glad you came, he said quietly. It's nice to see you so relaxed. Naruko smiled, her eyes softening. It's nice to be relaxed. I've missed this. Thank you, Gaara. For everything. He gave a small, genuine nod, his voice low and steady. This is home, Naruko. You're always welcome here. And with that, the night carried on, a night full of laughter, playful competition, and memories made with family, friends, and more. As the years unfolded like the slow petals of a desert bloom, Naruko and Gaara's bond only deepened. Their visits grew more frequent, their silences more comfortable, and the spaces between their words held the kind of warmth only time and trust could create. It wasn't a whirlwind romance, not the kind you read about in novels or scrawl into journals during lonely nights. It was quieter than that. Steadier. Like a sand dune sculpted over years by the soft brush of the wind. A bond shaped not by declarations, but by the hundreds of small, unwavering ways they showed up for each other. And then, one quiet morning in Suna, beneath the cool shade of a white-clothed pavilion, surrounded by family and close friends, it happened. Their wedding wasn't lavish, nor particularly traditional. Naruko didn't wear a royal kimono lined with phoenix embroidery. She wore pale yellow, with a simple sunflower hairpin in her short, tousled locks. Gaara wore his Kazekage robes, but for once, left the gourd behind. The guest list was small: Tamari, Kankuro, Shikadai, Shikamaru, and a few of Naruko's dearest friends from the Leaf. Kakashi sat in the front row, smiling knowingly behind his mask. Lee cried the entire time, clutching a decorative scroll about eternal bonds of youthful love. Sasuke had sent a quiet note and a rare gift, a cherry wood carving of two cranes flying together. The ceremony itself was simple. There was no need for elaborate words. Just two hearts that had traveled through war, leadership, and loneliness, now choosing peace in each other. Gaara's voice was steady as he took her hands in his. "I used to believe love was something that would never find someone like me. But you showed me it doesn't come loudly. It comes softly, and it stays. You stayed." Naruko's fingers squeezed his, her grin as radiant as ever. "And I'll keep staying. No matter how long the desert stretches or how loud the wind howls. You'll always be my calm." They didn't kiss dramatically, nor cry loudly. But when Gaara leaned forward and rested his forehead against hers, the desert wind quieted for a moment, as if the world itself held its breath. Later that evening, back in the Kazekage estate, the family gathered for a small dinner. There was laughter, teasing, and, of course, Naruko's cooking. She insisted on making the cake herself, Tamari groaned, staring at the slightly lopsided multi-layered treat covered in bright orange frosting and questionable icing frogs. "I swear she's trying to kill us." Naruko stood proudly beside it, arms crossed. "Excuse you, Tamari. This cake is beautiful. It's rustic." "Rustic? It's frothing," Kankuro muttered. Even Gaara looked at it for a long moment, clearly deciding between honesty and diplomacy. "It's orange," he finally said. Naruko burst out laughing. "Fine. You don't have to eat it. I'll eat the whole thing myself." But later that night, when she returned to their quiet shared room, the slice of cake Gaara had politely refused was mysteriously missing from the plate. She found him standing on the balcony, looking out at the stars above the sand village, the plate beside him now empty. "You ate it," she said, crossing her arms, amused. "I did," Gaara replied, glancing at her with that rare, warm smile he reserved only for her. "It wasn't terrible." Naruko grinned. High praise from the Kazekage himself. They stood together for a while, hand in hand, the desert wind winding around them like a protective blanket. As the moon hung full above the dunes and the stars whispered ancient things overhead, Naruko leaned into his side. "We made it," she whispered. Gaara glanced at her, his eyes soft and certain. "Yes. And this is just the beginning." And so it was. Not a fairy tale. Not a grand legend. But something sweeter. Realer. Two souls who had once walked separate, wounded paths. Now walking forward together. Hand in hand. Sand and leaf. Heart and heart. Dear YouTube family. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this short fanfic. There's plenty more to come, so stay tuned and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Much love. 6 Path Weeb.